Channel 6, KRMA TV, Denver. Funding for Smith and Muse is made possible in part by the C.A. Norgren Company, Colorado National Banks, Adolph Coors Foundation, and the Council for Public Television.
Good evening. Welcome to Smith and Muse. The mall is a mess downtown. Everybody from Canada, it seems, owns a piece of downtown Denver. There's construction all over the place. We're going to try and nip at least a tip of the iceberg tonight.
We don't think we're going to come up with any answers in 30 minutes, but we do expect to have a stimulating discussion. So join us when we discuss downtown Denver on Smith and Muse.
Dana Crawford, you're with Larimer Square Associates, a familiar name to a lot of people that live in Denver. I guess the thing that disturbs me most as I see downtown grow is the removal of so many buildings, new buildings being put up that are steel and glass, large facades with very little people-oriented availability to any sorts of recreation, restaurants, those kinds of things like that. Is that trend going to stay like that? Is downtown Denver going to be like downtown Dallas at night where you can shoot cannonballs down the street and nobody is harmed? Or is that what we have to look forward to?
Well, I certainly hope not. I think there are a lot of people here who care, and I think that the new Denver Partnership and Downtown Denver Inc. are working hard, and the city is beginning to respond to the whole idea of people, places. After all, the planning for the mall itself, which of course has been going on for many, many years, has a strong element that is people-oriented and retail-oriented, and I think that that it's painful now, but the future looks quite bright.
But it seems like the buildings that are going up, though, even the new ones that are completed, and construction is completed on them, should we step on toes, name names? Really have, there might be a bank lobby in them, but there really isn't much else.
Well, there is not really a tradition of architectural excellence in this community, and I think that it's part of our responsibility, just as quickly as we possibly can, to try to engender a new tradition of architectural excellence. And I believe that involves, and a lot of people don't understand this, but what happens between buildings, how people feel about it. Mm-hmm. And again, I go back to retail being an extremely important part of perhaps a bank lobby. One of the new banks downtown is addressing that subject. It's kind of a complicated thing to figure out how people are going to respond in a public place, but fortunately a lot of research has been done on it about how people behave. And certainly we're very much on the brink, I think, of missing the boat in downtown Denver. But Fleming's going to save us.
Is that it? That's great.
Dick Fleming, you're president of Denver Partnership Incorporated, which I think emerged from Downtown Denver Incorporated.
Yes, it did.
The mall originally was the idea of Downtown Denver Incorporated way back in 1971. A lot of people then felt that the mall was a self-serving idea, which was cooked up by the downtown Denver businessmen to save downtown Denver, which was dying a slow death, losing out to suburban malls. A lot of people felt it was part of a master plan, along with Auraria, which brought thousands of students to the core city to, again, benefit the downtown businessmen. And a lot of people still think that the mall essentially is a concept that is only going to benefit a very small number of people. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's a bit of a misnomer to suggest that a functioning, lively, mixed-use, pedestrian-oriented downtown Denver is uniquely to the benefit of just the businesses in downtown Denver. A functioning and lively center city is something that is of interest to neighborhood groups, is of interest to clearly the businesses themselves, city government. The successful cities in this country are ones that have taken just the kind of step that Denver did in 1970 and 71 and figured out what needed to be happening in a major way to make downtown competitive again with the suburban retail malls that were outcompeting downtown, and with that, downtown has lost its role as the shopping center for the neighborhoods that surround it.
Okay, Dick, one of the things that concerns me is that this is for people, of course. How are the people from Littleton, Arvada, Lakewood, all the suburbs supposed to get to the mall? How will they utilize the mall?
Well, it's not unrelated to the mall itself. The mall is thought of in one dimension as an urban design improvement and something that's going to create a good space in the downtown, but its other role is to improve the ability to service the transportation needs of downtown.
Will they drive to the mall?
Well,
and then if they do, where will they park?
Well, it's a combination. I think it's useful to look to Portland, which is a very analogous city that's done such a mall. 55% of the people in Portland come to downtown by bus right now by virtue of the quality of that design and the management of that mall, which means also that 45% of the people do not. So it's not to understate the importance of dealing with the continuing needs for parking, which are critical. But the fact that we're going to have that mall is going to enable us to bring an awful lot of the people from the surrounding suburbs. 100,000 people are going to be working in downtown Denver within the next couple years. Most of those people are coming from the very places you just suggested. And it's our hope that perhaps as many as half of them will be coming on public transportation. We may be able to improve on that if we do light rail in terms of capturing more of the trips by public transit.
The mall's there. I mean, the ball is rolling, so to speak, and wobbling or whatever. But you took Larimer Square and privately turned that thing around, made it commercially viable, and all those other kinds of things. Is it the public responsibility to pick up the tab to make downtown commercially viable?
Well, it's not a one-dimension thing. I think Dana probably can tell you of a lot of public things that supported in context what you did in Larimer Square. Maybe not enough, but...
You understand my point, though?
Well, I understand your point, but I think you're going right back to what Dick said, and I think that downtowns in cities are the place where somebody from Littleton might not go there all the time, but should feel a sense of pride, should be extremely attractive. It really is the expression of the spirit of a metropolitan area and how people think and feel about their city. And that involves, many, many different facets, but I think the idea that the mall or anything that happens to improve downtown is just to benefit a small group of people is really a very bad idea.
Along those lines, Dana, when you envision Denver of 1990, do you see a downtown Denver that really reflects the diversity of people, culture, ethnicity, or is it essentially going to be an enclave of the affluent?
Well, I think
I'm talking about the very expensive high-rise condominiums.
Very, very key question, and I think 1990 is really upon us, and we're not ready. I don't believe at this moment to do a particularly creative job of achieving the goal that those of us who are here tonight would really like to, I'm sure, dream about. I think the answer to your question really lies in housing and the utilization of some of the land downtown for...
But it's all going to high-rise expensive condominiums.
Well, I'm aware of where it's going now, but it is within our power, I believe, to make some changes in that regard.
Do you see any indication to do that, though?
At the moment, I would say that more people are talking about it, more people are caring about it, and that's what brings about political change.
Denver Partnership Incorporated, do you really have power? I mean, as these people go around throwing up these buildings downtown, can you really say, hey, hang on a second, how about some low-income, middle-income housing? How about more people space? Do you really have any power that way?
Legally, no. Persuasion-wise, yes, and I suppose it's a case of trained elephants and wild elephants. We'd like to think that the initiative that the business leadership has taken in creating the Denver Partnership and its commitment to the kinds of things we're here talking about is perhaps at times as persuasive as legislation. The kind of vision that is represented in that and was represented in cities like downtown Minneapolis, which 10 years ago decided to do the same thing and has now done it. It doesn't necessarily have to be legislative, but the premise of it is that the private sector has to be collectively organized to deal in a partnership with the public sector. There's some things that are public responsibility, but there are other things that the private sector can probably do better in a self-enlightened way on the kind of issues you're talking about.
On another subject, the Reagan administration, in my opinion, dropped a bombshell when they talked about mass cuts in transportation. And I understand that could mean a $9 million loss a year to RTD. Now, what's that going to do to the free shuttle buses? Are they going to be able to absorb that loss and still provide free shuttle buses for the malls? Are they going to have to charge? And if they do, is that still going to make the mall an attractive place to come to?
Well, the premise of the mall is that secondary distribution system, the shuttle, is free. And it's going to clearly make it tougher for RTD to provide that service and to operate their basic system.
Okay, we can get some answers directly from RTD, I think.
Isn't it? It's the magic of media, how we make this transition. Can I ask you to stand up, the head of RTD?
I'm Ed Cathell, right, Executive Director of the RTD.
We haven't really quite gotten around to beating up on you yet tonight.
No, that's right.
But in terms of the mall, let's start with the mall. It's a big mess. Everybody's really uncomfortable with it. When is it going to be done?
Well, first of all, I've never seen anything that's being built that's not a mess, but we plan to have the mall built by next fall, and we believe, not next fall, fall of '82, and we believe that it'll be worth the pain.
What about dollars and cents? We've heard all these horror stories about cost overruns.
Well, let's say that the budget has been adjusted as we've gone along, but presently we're within the adjusted budget.
What is that adjusted budget?
The adjusted budget for the entire mall is, Ralph, I'm going to call to my expert, is what?
$73 million as opposed to original price tag of 50-some? Is that right?
I think about, what was it, Ralph?
There we go. Ralph?
My name's Ralph Jackson. I'm Deputy Executive Director with RTD. I think the important thing to recognize about the budget for the entire project, which has 6 pieces, and that's what I was giving you the $73 million on, is that that's less than 5% away from the figure we started out with in 1979 when we submitted the grant application. So there have been internal adjustments on the various pieces of the project, but the total is within 5% of where we started out when we submitted the grant application.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the mall itself and the way it functions, weren't there to be shuttle buses that were electric powered, and now that this whole thing is happening, we're going to have gas-powered buses that are going to be coughing and chugging their way up and down the streets?
Fortunately, that isn't the case. We are purchasing 19 vehicles, 13 of which are diesel, 6 are going to be battery-powered. We've got 2 of the vehicles already built in Germany. They're testing the battery components in California right now, and those are looking very positive. We hope to be able to convert the other 13 diesel to battery if it works out. So we'll have 6 battery to start with and hopefully a full fleet before we're through.
Okay, we have a wide range of opinions in the audience here tonight. We're going to come back to you guys because there's a lot of controversy about what's going to happen with the terminals at either end of the mall. Who has a comment? Who wants to go? Let's go.
I'm Joyce Thorne, and I live in Capitol Hill, and I want to yell at you a bit for saying that anything that has to do with downtown only serves downtown. I think metropolitan Denver is built on the concept of a downtown city, and I agree with Dana that that's the essence of the metropolitan area.
Well, I think on an ideal level, and I don't know if I really said that or not, I may have been playing devil's advocate, but I think on a realistic level, the people in Lakewood and Aurora and out in the suburbs could give a hang about what really happens downtown. Would you agree or disagree with that? No? Okay.
I'd like to ask Dana, what happens right now? Is it strictly tourists who come to Larimer Square, or are the people of Denver coming down and supporting it?
Well, we don't have a statistical way of addressing this, but we go through the master charges in the visas. And we believe that 65% of the trade that comes to Larimer Square over a year's time is local, and the balance, 35%, is tourist.
Yeah, but local meaning Lakewood or local core city?
Oh,
or?
no, the metropolitan area.
Uh-huh.
I have trouble drawing the lines between the 41 little groups that make up the metropolitan Denver area.
Okay.
I'm Bob McPhee, Capitol Hill resident, apartment dweller, interested in housing for downtown, and I'd like to ask Dick Fleming and Kathy Donahue why, when we saw two or 3 years ago that we were going to be inundated with office buildings, why wasn't some pressure or something implemented to for instance, this is only an example, but to make Denver the core city, the central business district, to make it a planned unit development so that it would be required that a proportionate amount of housing be built for every permit that's issued for an office building. In other words, it's very easy, if there is agreement, to restrict this runaway, what I call out-of-balance growth. Now, the other thing is that I hear is that, you know, because of all the pressure that the land downtown now has become too expensive for housing. Well, if we had done, and it's still not too late to do, one of the smartest politicians in Colorado is over in little tiny Crested Butte, and he and his citizens initiated a referendum. They voted a referendum which charges a real estate transaction tax on every transaction in the city.
All right, let's go for it.
Well, I can't answer for 2 years ago because I've just been here 6 months, but I think the point is well taken. What is, in fact, a response to the very kind of issue you raise is what's going on in rezoning right now, whether it's downtown or in neighborhoods. We've got a zoning structure which is completely out of sync with what is happening in the city. If it's 16th Street, we need to get in there and state the objectives. If those objectives are requiring retail and providing incentives for retail and for housing by the zoning itself, that's what we should do, and that's what we are in the process of doing. Lower downtown's the same thing. I think requiring housing absolutely is something that no city in the country other than San Francisco, which has just begun experimenting with that, has tried it. I think it's tough to impose that kind of a use when you recognize the economics of it to start with, but you can give incentives for it.
Isn't it really the city administration, though, that kind of controls what kind of zoning takes place, like Curtis Park? Who's from, here we go.
City administration, I'm Errol Stevens with the Mayor McNichol's office. I was going to mention a minute ago that I thought that you're really off base when you discuss how much of a mess downtown is. I think that's just a very short-sighted view. If people would have said that when we were building the city-county building several years back, we would look back now and see they're foolish. They were just short-sighted. And in terms of the zoning question, I don't think it's out of sync. We're working with private enterprise right now to see if we can improve the zoning downtown, but we don't believe it's wholly out of sync. We believe that the owners in both the zones downtown should be involved in discussions that lead to improvements, but there are some beautiful buildings downtown. I challenge anybody to find more beautiful buildings downtown than you'll find many times in the marble plazas and the glass buildings. They're beautiful. As far as I'm concerned,
they're great to look at, but are they functional in terms of, well, the people work in there, but are they functional in terms of people, places, right?
We think so. When I walk across to take the bus home every day, I walk across granite, I walk in front of marble columns, and in the face of beautiful glass skyscrapers. I'm very comfortable down there. I like it. I think it's vital. I think it's beautiful. And I think we should all get behind what's happening downtown and try to improve it. But bad-mouthing it, I don't think we should be doing.
Okay, how about the idea that Curtis Park, for instance, that's where downtown seems to be moving. What about zoning changes there? That's a neighborhood. Is it going to be lost to skyscrapers?
I think rezoning that area would be an excellent idea to help develop and stabilize residential development. No question about it.
Anybody want to respond to that?
I just want to extend that point. I think the zoning is out of sync, and that's not to say that's something that the city totally disagrees with. We're in a one-dimensional thing on that. I think it's out of sync in areas of encouraging the kinds of things that we could be encouraging. I agree. The office buildings really make it possible, but we're not getting it, and we've seen it in other cities, and I think we're going through this. It is with the city's lead and with the private sector working with the city, but what are the refinements that we can make? We don't want 16th Street to be a shadowed canyon of office buildings. That's fine on 17th Street. That's our financial district. But some basic changes need to occur to help make that happen, to encourage that to happen, to get retail and pedestrian activities reinforced. Because the streetscape is as important in the liveliness of downtown as the skyline.
Okay. I can't guess that you might not have a comment or two to make at this point.
Well, I'm Kathy Donahue, Denver City Council. We are about to start on the council with something that I think will be extremely controversial, And it will give people like Mr. McPhee and RTD and a lot of people in this room that may be concerned about Curtis Park or Capitol Hill an opportunity to let the politicians know whether or not they want some controls. I personally believe that if we take the mall and put 25-story buildings next to it, that no one will walk on it. It will be dark, it will be snow-covered, it will be frozen, it will be windy, it will be a whole bunch of things that aren't very nice. And I would think that there is a point for discussion when the council talks about various height controls in different parts of the city. I have the feeling that it's going to be one of the bloodiest battles the council will endure because it's an attempt to remove property rights from people in a land that has put property rights way above human scale for many years. And so I think when Mr. McPhee suggests that I hope he participates in the battle because we may not ever be able to do it. And when we get to Curtis Park, we're going to do a downzoning? Maybe. We don't know. I will tell you there's a raging controversy over there, and people are threatening the councilman of the district both ways not to do the downzoning, to make it into just residential, that he's taking away property rights if he does. I don't know what he's going to do. That's the debate on the council floor. But I think those are two very key positions that will be public, loud, that you will be able to voice an opinion. And if the citizens really want some creative design and want some controls, as people suggest all the time, but then when you do it, they get really mad, I think they'll have an opportunity pretty soon in front of the Denver City Council. It's going to be hot.
Okay, anybody else have any comment? All right, here we go.
I want to ask a question of you about the city council. Whose responsibility is it to inform these people? For instance,
There'll be signs all over the whole area, big yellow signs.
For instance, did the city council have, originally when the mall was, the concept of the mall, did the city council have anything to do with informing the residents in that area what was going on and how the mall, Arapahoe Place and so on would affect the people in Curtis Park?
When the mall was there, I was not on the council, but in Arapahoe Place, I remember going down there and meeting with some of the people and being one of the leaders encouraging the Denver Urban Renewal Authority not to build it the way they were going to build it.
Okay, other comments? You had a comment.
Yeah, I wanted to respond. Ralph Jackson again from RTD. I think it's important to look at what's happening on 16th right now. First of all, the reports I've read are that the business is up 17%, and I've talked personally to a lot of those merchants that have dealt with concrete trucks and their vaults being rebuilt. Another point is that you look at a place like Champa Center. That retail was designed specifically to take into account the fact that the mall was coming. It leads right out onto the mall. The two interrelate very well. I've also looked at some of the other plans that are coming because we have to interface with those. Those are very well designed with retail at the ground level, and so there is a lot of retail responding to the downtown area. I'd like to just mention in response to the lady's question about the public hearing, we've held literally hundreds of meetings before the mall started, while the mall was under constructed, including formal public hearings, and so there was a very extensive process to make sure people are aware of it.
Yet at the same time, I think a lot of people have the idea that RTD makes a decision, then holds a public hearing. You patronize everybody by holding the hearing, and you're going to go ahead and do whatever the heck you want to do anyway.
Let me tell you just very briefly what the process is. In order to hold that formal public hearing under federal guidelines, you need to put the project together, define it, do your cost estimate, have a preliminary plan, and then you hold your public hearing. The difficulty always is, in order to generate the information they need, you have to get far enough along that people then are concerned that it's too far along. But I would say that the project has responded in many instances to public concern.
Okay,
what's
going to happen with the terminals at either end of the mall? City Council says, don't you build those buildings on the end of that mall in the, right?
Well, as a matter of fact, we feel that we've modified that design extensively based on public input over the last 6 months. The grant is already there, the funding is there, but we've modified that project to do things like enclose the bus circulation area, to include retail into that space, which wasn't as explicitly planned to begin with. At the other end, we've created a park environment rather than having the buses at grades. And those are direct responses to community input over the last 6 months.
Harry, may I ask one more quick question,
Yeah.
this gentleman?
Here you go.
If
You're
in
up
fact
again.
you do have to absorb a considerable budget cut if Mr. Reagan goes ahead with his budget cuts in transportation and you do lose $9 million a year, what will the bus fare have to go to in Denver in order to keep the shuttle buses free on the mall?
Well, remember that...
Ralph, maybe go ahead and feel free to
Let me
comment.
just explain on the shuttle, and he may have a more general question. Dick Fleming answered it correctly before. The shuttle we have a free transfer policy system right now. So instead of collecting the fare on the shuttle, you collect it on the express bus as it goes out of town or on the local bus. And
That's
so,
my question. What will that fare have to go to if you lose $9 million in order to
okay,
keep
the shuttles, there is no fare collected on the shuttle. Mr. Cathell can answer the question on overall fares.
There we go.
Well, I think right now we're facing a little bit of a crisis, as everybody is who has any federal subsidies. But in terms of the mall vehicle, we're going to keep that free.
At any cost.
In terms of fares that we have to charge the public, we're doing a lot of things right now. For example, we're trying to get more productive. We're cutting our cost internally. We've also raised the fares, as you well know. I don't believe we can ever raise the fares enough to cover cost. I don't think that's possible. We're not a profit-making organization. But it is clear that the fares, which approximate about 24% of our operating expenses, are too low in terms of user share. And so we are going to raise those fares to some degree. At what point that becomes, there's a limit there, we'll meet that as we come on. But I think looking at things like light rail that Dick mentioned, that makes a more productive system. We've often looked at light rail as simply a luxury out there that we'd love to all have, but we really can't afford it. The fact is that if you want a truly productive bus system, you've got to go out and establish a light rail system. It's part of a productive system, and it is your main line, high-density route that you want to implement so that the buses will feed into it. Okay. And so I would say to you that there are a lot of issues. It's not simply a fare issue. There are a lot of issues that will go into what we ultimately charge.
Okay. One thing real quick, and that is a lot of people say, I don't want to go downtown because I can't park anyway. And that may seem small, but on a day-to-day basis.
I'm glad you asked, because I represent a minority in two cases, I guess. One, unlike RTD, I'm a small businessman, and I do not operate at a loss. I'm not subsidized, so it's required that I make every square foot of my office space downtown count. The other thing is that I represent a minority in that I'm 45% of the people that do use their cars downtown. I use my car during the day. I can't afford to take the bus to take clients to lunch and this type of thing. What I'm really concerned with and what's driving me out of downtown Denver is that the cost of parking is more than my office space now on a square foot basis. There's no provision that I see for any expansion of parking if there is a growth of 100,000 people to be working in downtown Denver. My question is, where are the people that need their cars going to park? And what are the provisions for limiting the costs that the garages can charge for parking spaces down there?
And we'll cover that in a show next year.
Next time. We thank you very much, Dana Crawford, Dick Fleming, for being with us. We didn't answer any questions, but we thought it was a good discussion.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us tonight on Smith and Muse.
Good night.
Funding for Smith and Muse is made possible in part by the C.A. Norgren Company, Colorado National Banks, Adolph Coors Foundation, and the Council for Public Television. 6 salutes Jane Flotman, Station Promotion Volunteer Extraordinaire. Jane is a one-woman publicity campaign, giving slideshows, distributing posters, furnishing program guides to everyone she can think of. Jane keeps our public informed.
Hello, I'm Harding Carter. You may remember me as the State Department spokesman. Before that, I spent 17